thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really happy to get this opportunity to show you some of the cool stuff that we're working on at GitHub. We're going to be demoing a lot, live demos, and as you saw in Preben's talk, this is a little bit unpredictable. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, because every time it gives me a different answer. So bear with me if there's a little bit of unpredictability, but it makes it fun. We'll talk about Copilot, which is the world's most widely adopted AI developer tool. But really, the core message I want to land today is that GitHub is doing a lot more than a code completion in the IDE. And I think I'm going to try to convince you of that today. For example, we'll look at GitHub Advanced Security, which is what my team is working on, and how that works, but also how we're starting to use AI within that to solve new classes of problems we couldn't solve before this evolution of AI systems. So in particular, an application security problem. And then we'll look very, very briefly, and I know I'm going to run out of time. We will look at Copilot for Enterprise, which is about customizing Copilot to your organization's code bases and knowledge. So really many experiences that are powered by AI, not just the completion. So Karl Krukow, I work as an engineering director at GitHub for a team called Code Scanning. That's part of this GitHub Advanced Security. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. But something I wanted to share with you is that GitHub is a global remote company, but we actually have people in Denmark, both here in Copenhagen as well as in Aarhus, that are working on some of the things we'll be talking about today. And I think that's pretty cool. We're helping secure open source software. We're helping secure the world's code. And it also means if you want to come talk to me after this, you can speak Danish as well. That's completely fine. So I want to start by talking a little bit about why I think we're uniquely positioned at GitHub to be leading in this AI developer space. And we are truly trying to build a AI-powered developer platform. And that's a shift that's been happening in the last 4 years, I think. We're fundamentally believing that AI is transformational, and we need to start thinking about how can we integrate it into every step of the development workflow. So obviously, we're building an integrated platform. We are trying to target developers, so making tools that make developers happy, make them more productive, and help them collaborate. We're building security into every step of the workflow. But the last and most relevant part for this talk is that we are building these AI experiences into the entire platform. It's not just about code completion. So the first superpower we have is developers. We have more than 100 million developers using GitHub every day. And GitHub's trusted by more than 90% of the Fortune 100 companies. So I think that's a huge advantage. The other big advantage we have is that partnerships. As you may know, GitHub was acquired by Microsoft in 2018. And through that acquisition, we now have access not only to a lot of resources through Microsoft, but also through these partnerships. So you may have seen that Microsoft is partnering with OpenAI. And that means that we're able to get the models that OpenAI are developing, some of them Preben was talking about, and be able to use them. But we don't actually call the OpenAI services directly. What we do is we take the models, we deploy them onto Microsoft infrastructure with the Azure cloud, and that gives us the advantage that we can scale. Because if you're going to deploy this and have, ideally, 100 million developers in the world using these, you need a massive amount of scale. So Microsoft is helping us with that. However, the partnership also goes in the other direction. So I really love Preben's ending, because he was calling out to the point I wanted to make now, which is, how did these models get trained on code? They needed that code. Where's that code stored? That was through the partnership with GitHub, right? So in 2021, there was a partnership where there was a model called Cushman that didn't know code. And together with OpenAI, GitHub partnered, and Microsoft partnered to train that on over 1 billion lines of code. And that's how this emergent capability of being able to write code, synthesize code, understand code came out. So this partnership is truly both ways. The other benefit we have is that Microsoft is quite a mature organization and has been building AI systems for a long time. So again, calling back to Preben's talk, all these filters, like how do we actually prevent these systems from generating malicious content or damaging content? Well, Microsoft has a lot of experience and tools and mature processes that help with that we can benefit from when we build AI systems, and we want them to be safe and act responsibly. So this is truly a unique advantage. Let's see if this clicker is active. It is, perfect. So, agenda, we'll talk about very briefly GitHub Copilot and Copilot Enterprise. What is it? How does it actually work? Why would you want to use it? And then we'll briefly talk about GitHub Advanced Security, which is a talk on its own, but I'll give you an intro. And then I'll end up with one way that we're starting to use generative AI within advanced security to solve this new class of problems. So that's the agenda. So what is GitHub Copilot? The world's most widely adopted developer tool. Has more than 1.5 million developers using Copilot today, and more than 50,000 organizations across industries, from automotive to, it's not just technology, also to travel, all sorts of industries. And of course, Copilot is constantly evolving, but the two main capabilities that it's famous for or recognized for is the AI-powered code suggestions. So these are, as a developer, you're in your development environment, you're focused at a particular point in your code, it will suggest code you might want to write at this point. And that sounds a little weird. Does it really work? And I can tell you, the first time you try it, it is magical. It is surprising how good it is. And you kind of got a taste of that from Preben's demo. But most of the time, it actually generates very high quality suggestions that match the context of your code. And that's not only in the model. It's not only in the training, because it needs to generate code that's relevant to the project you're working in, right? It's not just about generic code that's public code on the internet that the model's been trained on. So it pulls in relevant context from the IDE, and that has helped us to increase one of the key metrics, which is the accept rate, which is how often does a developer actually accept a given suggestion that it makes. And even if they accept it, how much of that, if they go and make edits, how much of that do we retain? So characters retained. So there's a lot of design here that's not just about the model. It's also what do you pull in, what do you give the model. So we actually did a study of this with Java, where we found that up to 60% of the code being written was generated by Copilot. The second primary capability are these context-aware conversations with an AI assistant. So this brings the natural language interactions, again, where we saw them, Preben was doing them in ChatGPT, bring them into the development environment and be relevant to the project you're working on, and now start having a conversation about your code. And this is super powerful. Developers can ask questions, they can help diagnose problems, they can get suggestions for how to solve a given problem. So that's the second piece that's quite powerful. And of course, all of this is available where the developer is, which is in the different IDEs. So we'll hear from JetBrains later, but also Visual Studio Code, as well as in the terminal, where a lot of developers actually end up spending a lot of their time. So with this conceptual understanding, what I thought I might do is make it concrete, show you how it actually works. And to do that, I want to use a real example of how I used it personally in my job. So this is an engineering organizational chart. You have me on the left. As a director, I often need to answer questions about the team, like how many people are in the team, how many managers are there, how senior are folks, who's a member of a given team. So my previous manager had built a nice little tool that could help me ask questions about the org chart from the command line, which I thought was pretty cool. Then I could export it into a spreadsheet and stuff like that. So that's the thing we're going to look at. Let me just, oops, wrong MacBook here. Let's click into this. You can see that. OK, awesome. So you see this is the repository for that tool. And I can run these little commands like query Krukow, which is my username, manager. And that gives me back who's my manager. Or query who are my direct reports. Or give me all the teams, then find the CodeQL Foundations team and who's the leader of that. So answering. I am zooming in once we go to the IDE in a second. Yeah. So this is just to give you the general picture. Sorry if you can't read it. It's not too important to read the specifics here. So what happened was that my manager left. And when he left, I was stuck with maintaining this tool. And I had two problems. One is this is written in Python. and I have very little experience writing Python. But that was not the major obstacle. The major obstacle is I've been working as a director for many years now, and I didn't actually raise my hand when Preben was asking who writes code every day. I don't spend my time doing this, right? However, with Copilot, I was comfortable taking this on, and I managed to do that. I fixed some bugs, I improved the tool, and I actually made it available to the rest of the company as a side project, and also I got to code a little bit, which was nice. So that's what I'm going to use as our starting point for this. So we will open VS Code here, and this should be, please shout if this isn't big enough. What I'll show you here is the main file that's involved in this tool, and sort of this class called Hopper, which represent an employee in the company. So this is what my former manager built, and there's a bunch of properties. So you can sort of, once you have one of these objects, you can ask what's this person's name, what's their email, who's their manager, and also more complicated things like if someone's a manager, who are all the direct reports of this person. So what I might want to do here is show you how Copilot code suggestions work by creating a new method. So we want to just create a method that answers the question whether someone is a manager of other managers, which is what I am. So I'll just start typing, and you see already now Copilot is making a suggestion saying I might want to create a new method called direct reports, which is an alias. I actually don't want to do this, but you can see it's already knowing the context of my code and proposing a method I might want to run that's using information in this file. That's not what I want. I want to create a is manager of managers. And you see here it's making a suggestion. So it's correctly saying that I need self as the first parameter. That's a Python idiom because there's a method in a class. And then it's actually making it's not a hard code suggestion, but it's using Python idioms. It's using any function. So is there any one of my directs who is a manager? So all I wrote was the intention of the code I wanted to have, and it suggested something. And by the looks of it, this actually looks correct, right? A manager is manager of managers if I have a report who is themselves a manager. At least one report, and that's exactly what this code is doing. So let's just try and run this. Is this big enough to read? So I'll take myself, and then I'll take this new method, which disappeared here, and I'll say this, so this should return true. It's a little bit slower the first time because it needs to fetch some data from the internet on the org chart. So that's great. Let's see if it works. So we have someone called Oscar SJ, who's a manager, but not a manager of managers. So let's just see that. Okay, and that returns false. So that's actually pretty cool. So this is just one example. I'm not actually going to spend a lot more time because what I wanted to talk about today is everything that's not this. So this on its own is magical, in my opinion, and works most of the time, gives pretty good quality. But there are also other things we can do. So for example here, I might want to click this little sparkle, which gives me an inline code pilot, and then I can go doc, which is, can you please generate some documentation for this method? Because I'm a lazy developer, and I didn't write the documentation myself. And then we can see the suggestion here, checks if the current instance is manager of managers, returns true if it's a manager. Okay, that's actually pretty good. I'll accept that. We got a little bit of a mess up of the indentation, so I'll fix that myself. And again, remember the point of the name Copilot is I'm the driver. I'm responsible for code quality. I am taking the decisions. It is helping me. I need to validate it myself. It's not replacing me as a developer. I can also do things like, I'm also lazy and I didn't write any tests, so what about generating some tests for this? And it's giving me an example of how I might test this, create a new file called test-impl. Sorry, the screen is a little small for this. And it provides the scaffolding for how I might go about testing and generating some test data of cases of managers and non-managers of managers. I'm not going to use that. So that's part one. I don't want to spend more time on this. Feel free to ask questions about it. What I want to do next is the conversational chat part of this. So what I thought we might do is use Copilot Chat. So I'm going to click on this class, and I'm going to select it here, and then I'm going to ask Copilot to explain this. And you see now it's opening the Copilot Chat window, and it's looking at my class using references to different things within my workspace, and it's going to spit out a description, kind of like Preben was doing when he said, "Can you explain this code for me?" It's kind of the same thing, but it's in the editor with my code in the context that I work in. So I'm not going to read all this. It's providing a lot of context, talking about Python design patterns, all sorts of stuff. Now what I'd like to do, and this is where it becomes a little bit fun, is I want to do a little bit more of an advanced feature and see if the chat system can help me. So what I want to do, and I'll paste in this prompt, is I'll say at workspace, which is a reference to the current project. So you can't do this in ChatGPT. This requires you to be in the IDE referencing your specific code. I want to create a method which prints the organizational chart for a hubber. How do I get started? Can you provide step-by-step instructions? And you see now it's going to do a little bit of information collecting. And while it's doing that, I will just figure out where to add whatever it's going to help me with. We'll just go here. And of course, this is going to be slow because it's a live demo. So the idea is we want to say there's a manager, print their name, and then all of those reports should be indented and then printed under them, and then the next level should be indented and printed under them. So if you think about this, the way you would want to do this is you have to sort of recursively print the org chart. So it's not necessarily a trivial programming example. And why is this being slow? Because it's a demo. Okay, here we go. So it's beginning to synthesize some help. It's doing step-by-step functions. We'll just let it go for a little while, maybe make this window a little bit longer. So it's suggesting a method here called print directs, and it's telling me how I can call this. So let's just take this as a starting point and put it over here. And then let's just make this window a little smaller so we can see the code. Here. So it didn't actually do it all that well because it didn't add it as a method. So I'll say, can we please make this method, this A method on a class? And how do I know that? Because it didn't add the self parameter here with the login. So I'm giving it some hints on how to do that. And let's see, yep, that's much better. And this is the unpredictable nature of these demos, because when I tested it at home, it did that in the first place. Oops, did I miss something here? Yep, there we go. So it's taking the self, and then it's iterating through all the direct reports and then printing all of those. So let's just test this. So we'll do query. We'll take Vilas Seeds, who's Isa, who's a manager reporting into me. And then we'll take this new, where did it go? There, print direct reports. So, and I guess this actually went wrong. I want to print the org chart, not just the reports. Include the self in the org chart. So this is going slower than I hoped, but I think we'll make it. So you notice that it was only printing the directs, it wasn't printing the object itself. And it did do that correctly here. We'll run it again. And then we need to print the org chart recursively. Because now we include Isa, but not necessarily that recursively. So the manager and the manager's report and the manager's reports all the way down. Here we go. So I will copy this over. I think I got the indentation wrong again there. So that's the caveat I had with the unpredictability of demos. Oops. So we changed the method name to print org chart. That's quite sensible. So it refactored the method name when I asked it to change the semantics. And now we're there. So we got the recursive call printing Isa and all of her reports. So that's pretty cool. But let's go even further. I'm going to now say, what if we could build a visualization of this? So I'm going to ask it, use a library to draw this rather than print it on the command line. I didn't say which library. I don't know Python. I don't know what to do. And it's saying, well, you can use this GraphViz. Here's how you install it. You need to import it. And here you need to change the code. OK. I'm not using pip. I'm using something called Poetry. So we'll add graph. GRAPHVIZ. Did I spell that incorrectly? Let's just copy it over here. Poetry add GraphViz. OK, cool. And then let's see. We need to import this. Let's do that at the top of the file. And let's just take this method and go print org chart. Let's just get rid of that. And now we want a visual instead. OK, and let me make this a little bit larger so you can actually read it. So now it's using this. It's creating a node for the given person. And then again, it's recursively calling down and creating a graph, a tree, and then calling a function, returning that. So let's try that out. So now we'll say, rather than print, we want this graph. And you see what it's doing is it created the graph correctly, but it didn't give me an image. So can we show this graph as an image? This is unprepared. I don't know what it's going to tell me. I don't know exactly what it's going to tell me. I know that it's able to do what I want. Oops, let me just make this a little bit bigger. OK, it's telling me once I have the chart, I can actually render that. OK, so we need to do that. So we'll say dev render org self. Oh, it actually suggested that automatically here. So draw the org chart, then render it. So let's run that. And let's see, did we actually create a file? Sorry, that's a little bit hard to read. Oh, good point. Thank you. Yeah, live demos. Yep, here we go. Oh, there we go. So now I created an image version of this org chart. And I don't know Python. I don't know these libraries. I just had a conversation and a little bit of help from the audience. Maybe I could have asked it, why didn't it draw this when I made this call? Let's do the final thing. Let's make this even more advanced. So we're going to create a small web server that can serve these images as a web. So I run it as a web server, make a request, give me an org chart image back. And it's saying I have to install something called Flask. So poetry add Flask. And then it's suggesting a bunch of code that we probably want to have in a new file as the server. So let's do that. Server.py. And then let's see. Let's just move all this code over. And then let's, again, make this a little bit bigger. So it's importing, I think I just want to import hoppers, yep. It's creating a new Flask, which is the web framework. And it defines a route. This code is actually a code from Hopper. We already have that, so don't need that. Then it's creating a new route in the server, which takes a login. And then, this is a little weird. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to say hoppers get the login. Then I call the chart. I just call this org chart. And then we'll try to render it. Let's see if this works. And then it starts the web server and then. So let's go Python server. Okay, we did get a web server. Here it's not doing anything. So let's go to the bottom of the chat here. So it says we have to use this URL here. And I want to do the org chart for Viliseeds. We get an error. So it said that the file was incorrect. And that's because we have the wrong file name here. So this needs to be, we want this to be, actually let's just make it a PDF. So I'll ask it, what's the MIME type for PDF? Application PDF, okay. And then the file name ends up being orgchart.pdf. Let's try that one. Oops. There we go. We actually got it. This is pretty cool. I'm happy with this. Happy enough for a demo anyway. Now I want to push the code to GitHub, but I don't actually remember the command. So I want to real quickly show you GitHub Copilot in the CLI. So how do I actually run the command to push this and add it to Git? So I'm going to add GitHub Copilot to suggest, push all the local changes and create a pull request. It's saying, hello, I'm GitHub CLI. What kind of command do you want here? I just want a generic shell command. And then it's saying, here's the things you can run. So that's great. I'll do git add. And now you see there's a little sparkly here. It will actually also help me generate a nice commit message from this change, which is another task the developer needs to do. It's saying we'll ask these dependencies and create an endpoint in the server. Cool. And how do I create a pull request? We'll just use this part here. Create it on the repo. Okay, and there we go. Whoops, that's not the command. And I'm too lazy, I'm not going to write a pull request description. But there we have the end flow, you can see all the files. I should probably have deleted some of the data that it spit out, but we're good to go. Okay, so I hope this gave you a real impression of how this works in practice. I stumbled because it didn't do exactly, I didn't know exactly what it was going to do, but I was able to walk through it, ask clarifying questions, and do a fairly advanced thing despite me not knowing very much about Python. I think it's quite impressive. And I think this is truly a global shift in, let's just make this a little bit larger, a shift in how we're going to develop software. If everyone has this technology, they will work differently. And I see there's a question, but I know I'm going to run out of time, so maybe we can do it at the end. Is that okay? We did some research that in that study we saw 55% faster coding and with higher quality. We even did another study together with Harvard Business School, which showed that as a developer starts using these tools, they learn how to use it, and they accept even more code. So they get better at using it over time. So this 55% is probably going to go up. We also did a study with Accenture, where they did the study internally with 450 developers and 6 months. And there's a lot of stats here, but the key is 90% more fulfilled, happy developers saying they were writing better code. 90% says that they spent less time looking for information, even things like number of builds and successful builds went up with the study. So that's GitHub Copilot, the two core experiences. I want to talk a little bit about Copilot Enterprise, which you can think of as two things. Number one is bring these AI experiences not just to the IDE, but to the GitHub platform. Number two, customize it to your organization's repositories and your organization's knowledge bases so that you can have a conversation about your organization's information. And to do that, I'll do a quick demo, which is pre-recorded here. I hope there's audio.
GitHub Copilot Enterprise personalizes the experience to the unique needs of your company. You can now use Copilot directly in GitHub.
Can you hear it?
Click on the Copilot icon and start exploring your codebase. To get even more personalized answers, you can index your repositories to enable fast semantic code search. Copilot responds with personalized answers, including links and references that allow you to navigate to the relevant files in your repo. You can ask natural questions like, what does this file do, to get a quick explanation of the file you have open. But being a developer isn't just about working with code. You may need to search documentation to understand implementation details or how your team works. You can now ask Copilot Chat to include a knowledge base from your GitHub organization to provide additional context. This lets you unlock the knowledge in your documentation through natural language, and Copilot will even provide references so you can verify or read more. But sometimes the answers you need aren't in your codebase or your documentation. Copilot and GitHub.com can now query the web. This helps provide up-to-date answers to your programming questions without opening another tab, keep you in the flow, and bring in the context with you. The answers come complete with sources, so you can explore the search results for further information. And because you're in chat, you can naturally continue the conversation with your AI pair programmer. But Copilot Enterprise is not just limited to chat. How many times have you opened a large pull request and seen a one-line description, or worse, no description at all? GitHub Copilot is now able to summarize the changes in a pull request, not just what lines changed, but meaningful descriptions of what those changes really do. You even get deep links to the lines changed right there in the description. With Copilot Enterprise, your AI pair programmer is more personalized, more powerful, and right where you need it.
Cool. So this really solves two things. One is the real time, being able to fetch information that's later than the training. The other is customization to the specific information in your organization. So it is really beyond the IDE here. We're going to do even more. We'll do custom models. So this means right now it's not trained on your code, right? You may be using internal SDKs, APIs, different languages that may not be widely available. So coming soon are custom models. And then integration with plugins. So whatever software or databases, whatever you're using will integrate, so Copilot has awareness of that as well. So it's all about increasing the customization. All right, I'm a little low on time, but I do want to talk about GitHub Advanced Security because that's what I work on. So GitHub Advanced Security is a suite of application security tools, and it's really focused on empowering developers to find and fix security vulnerabilities in your application, as well as prevent those vulnerabilities from happening in the first place. And this is a whole talk on its own. I actually gave it at GOTO Copenhagen last year. I don't know if it's on YouTube. But I'll give you just a very, very brief intro. The different products take care of different aspects of security. Secret scanning will scan your code base and see if there are any API tokens, credentials, things that developers sometimes put in code. They lead to leaks. If someone gets access to the code, they get access to the credential. And that's actually at the root of many, many security problems. So we'll find those, notify you, and help you remediate them. We will also do push protection, which warns the developer if they're about to take such an action. Supply chain is about dependencies. So every software program today is having a lot of dependencies, a lot of open source dependencies. How do you know what those dependencies are? What versions are there? Are any of those versions vulnerable? Are you using a dependency that has a vulnerability? We will tell you about that. We will also help you upgrade if you have a dependency that's vulnerable, or gets a new vulnerability, help you update to a secure version. and we will help you preventing those dependencies from entering the code in the first place. So that's the high-level supply chain. I know I'm going fast. Code scanning I'll talk about in a moment. That's what my team does. And security overview is basically insights and reporting on all of these security problems you have in an organization, so you can see burn down over time. This is free for open source because we want to secure open source as well. Code scanning, think of this as securing the code your development teams are writing. And the vision for this is, what if every team had a security expert that was embedded right in the team, working along developers, so when a developer makes a change, they do a code review of that change from a security perspective, and then give the developer feedback, just like their colleagues are doing when they're doing code review. And so that's what you see here. Here's a developer writing a change. The code scanning system is running as part of continuous integration. It runs an analysis of the code, and it posts a code review comment, along with information about what is the problem, links to click in and read more, and then your development team can have a conversation about this particular vulnerability. How do I fix it? Is it really applicable in my code? And so how do we do that? You need an engine that understands code, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So in 2019, GitHub acquired a company called Semel, which had built this engine called CodeQL, which is a semantic code analysis engine. It's been developed from research teams in University of Oxford. A bunch of programming language PhDs built this and figured out that they can use this program analysis to find security problems. So GitHub acquired them in 2019, and that's the team I'm leading today. I'll go fast, so we'll just jump right in. So CodeQL is unique in a couple of ways. First of all, it considers your code a database. So imagine every commit, every change to your code base, we build a database that represents the state of the code at that point in time. Now, if you want to ask questions about that code, that's a query to that database. So we can actually do quite sophisticated data flow analyses as queries to this database using this QL language. However, you don't need to learn the QL language to do this because it comes with batteries included. So our team of security and programming language experts have built a large SWAT of queries that are included with CodeQL, so that out of the box, it just does security analysis. But if you want to, you can fine-tune it and write your own queries to do your own custom analyses. So that's CodeQL. It's part of GitHub Advanced Security. We develop it in my group, including some of the people working here in Copenhagen. However, what's new here is that in the past, we stopped after finding security problems. CodeQL is really good at understanding code, finding patterns, doing data flow analysis, so that if you get, let's say, an untrusted input in from a user, it flows through method calls, assignments, and then ultimately it goes into a call that might go to a database. That can be potentially insecure if you don't clean up the inputs. And that's an example of what's happening here, a cross-site scripting vulnerability. CodeQL found the problem, but the problem that was really hard is how do you fix it? Because CodeQL can't create code. It can analyze code, it doesn't create code. So if you combine the analysis of CodeQL, which understands the problem, can give a very good description of what the problem is, what are the relevant files that are associated with this problem, combine that with the power of a Copilot, which understands code, ask it to take all this information in, and then you really get the whole is greater than the sum of the parts here. Are we at time? We're almost there. So this provides a suggestion, and this is a complicated suggestion. It's looking at multiple files, saying change this file, change that file, add this new dependency to sanitize, and then make a call to the sanitation library here. Do you want to commit this fix? Or if not, do you want to edit the fix, take the fix in, edit it in your editor, and then go and resolve it? So that's really the new capability that we have. Oh, we have 4 minutes. I was going to show you that, but I promise this is a quick one. So let's go here. Let's look at the pull request we had before. You notice that I made a change, and actually here, this was Copilot suggesting this, right? It said you can run the server like that. It actually runs in debug mode, and CodeQL has detected that this is running in debug mode. You probably don't want to do that in production, because if you attach a debugger, you can run arbitrary code. So it explains what's the problem, and now AutoFix, the new capability, is saying, here's what you might want to do to help solve this problem. It's saying, let's import the OS library, and then let's make an environment variable decide whether this is running production mode or development mode. So I can just go ahead and commit that fix my security vulnerability directly, make a commit. It also added the commit message. Or I can say, I want to tweak this, I want a different name. So I can either go in something called CodeSpaces, which is an online editor or online development environment, or I can just pull this down locally in my own IDE with a GitHub CLI extension. Pull in the fix, apply it, and let me work with it. In this case, I'll just commit the fix because it's actually looking great. So that's the new capability. We just launched that in public beta, and we really hope we can help developers remediate security problems using this. And we're done. Thank you very much.